I woke up on my 55th birthday feeling the emptiness that had settled inside me after Emily disappeared in 2007. She was never found, and I learned to live with that pain. But today I received a message on my phone: "I'm alive, look in the basement." My heart pounded with shock and hope. Was it a cruel joke? Was she really alive? I went down into the darkness of the basement, not knowing that I would find a truth that would destroy everything I believed in and force me to rethink my life. Before we continue, please like and comment where you are listening to this. The coffee was cold in my hand, the mug's chipped edge biting into my palm. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the cracked linoleum, the same table where Emily and I once laughed over late-night pancakes. February 18, 2025. My 55th birthday. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that settles into your bones after years of living alone. Emily had been gone since 2007, vanished without a trace, and I'd learned to carry that ache like a second skin. The police gave up years ago. I hadn't. My phone buzzed on the table, a sharp jolt in the stillness. I glanced at it, expecting a birthday text from Jack, my son, or maybe a spam ad. The screen glowed with a number I didn't know. The message was simple, brutal: "I'm alive. Look in the basement." My breath caught. The mug slipped, coffee splashing across the table like dark blood. My heart pounded, a wild thing trapped in my chest. Emily? Alive? After 18 years? It had to be a cruel joke. But what if it wasn't? I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. The kitchen felt too small, the walls pressing in. My hands trembled as I grabbed the phone, rereading the words. Look in the basement. The basement. I hadn't been down there in years, not since I boxed up Emily's things, her dresses, her photo albums, her life. I wanted to scream, to demand answers from the empty air. "Is this you, Em?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. No one answered. The hallway to the basement door was dim, the light bulb overhead flickering like a dying star. A cracked mirror hung on the wall, reflecting my face, gray hair, deep lines, a man hollowed out by time. I opened the door. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step a descent into memory. The air grew colder, thicker, smelling of damp concrete and mold. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Boxes were stacked in the corner, their edges soft with dust. Somewhere, a pipe dripped, a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. I moved toward a box labeled Emily's photos. My fingers brushed the cardboard, and a memory flickered, her smile, bright as summer, the way she'd tilt her head when she laughed. I pushed it away. No time for that now. I opened the box, revealing a photo album, its leather cover cracked like old skin. My hands shook as I lifted it. Something slipped out, falling to the floor with a soft thud. A letter. The paper was yellowed, the edges curled. Emily's handwriting stared back at me, jagged and hurried. "I can't do this anymore, Frank. I have to go." My knees buckled. I sank to the cold floor, clutching the letter. Tears burned my eyes, blurring the words. "Why, Emily?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "Why now?" The letter didn't explain. It didn't absolve. It only cut deeper. A photo lay beside me, dislodged from the album. Our wedding day. Emily in her white dress, me grinning like I'd won the world. The glass frame was cracked, a jagged line splitting us apart. I stared at it, my chest tight with grief and rage. The basement felt like a tomb, sealing me in with truths I wasn't ready to face. I stood, the letter crumpled in my fist. The stairs loomed ahead, leading back to the world above. Outside, rain began to fall, a soft patter against the basement window. It reminded me of another rainy day, years ago, when Emily stood in the garden, staring at nothing. I shook my head, pushing the memory away. I had to keep moving. The rain tapped against the living room windows, a restless rhythm that matched my thoughts. I sat in the old armchair, its fabric worn thin by years of use. The photo album rested on my lap, heavy as a confession. The letter from the basement was folded in my pocket, its words burning through me. I have to go. I couldn't face it yet. Instead, I opened the album, letting the past pull me under. The first photo was our wedding, 1995. Emily stood in her white dress, the lace swaying like petals in the breeze. Her smile was radiant, but her hand trembled as she held her wine glass. I hadn't noticed it then, too drunk on love to see the shadows in her eyes. I traced her face with my finger, the paper cool against my skin. We were so young, so sure we'd conquer the world together. I turned the page. Jack's birth, 2000. Emily cradled him in the hospital bed, her hair damp with sweat. I remembered the joy, the way my heart swelled when I held our son. But Emily, she'd turned away when I tried to kiss her, her gaze fixed on the window. I told myself she was tired. Mothers get tired, don't they? I didn't ask. I never asked. The rain grew louder, drumming against the roof. The living room smelled of dust and time, the curtains faded from years of sunlight. I flipped to another photo, 2005. Emily in the garden, her back to me. She'd sit there for hours, staring at the roses like they held answers I couldn't give. Some nights, she'd snap over nothing, a spilled glass, a forgotten chore, her voice sharp as broken glass. I'm fine, Frank, she'd say, but her eyes were empty. I closed the album, my throat tight. I'd painted her as perfect in my mind, a saint lost to tragedy. But she wasn't. She was unraveling, and I was too blind to see it. Guilt settled in my chest, heavy as the rain outside. I should have pushed harder, asked more, loved better. Instead, I let her slip away. One photo caught my eye, tucked in the back. Emily stood by a closed door, her expression unreadable. The door was painted red, chipped at the edges, a barrier she never crossed. Or maybe she did. Maybe that door was her way out, and I never saw it coming. I touched the photo, my fingers lingering on her face. What were you hiding? I murmured. The album slipped from my hands, landing with a soft thud. The room felt too small, the air thick with memories I couldn't escape. My gaze drifted to the phone on the coffee table, its screen dark but alive with possibility. The message. The number. I reached for it, my heart racing. I needed answers, and I needed them now. The phone was cold in my hand, the screen glowing like a taunt. I dialed the number from the message, my fingers slipping on the keys. The rain hammered the house, each drop a pulse in the suffocating dark. The call rang once, twice, then nothing. Silence. I dialed again. More silence. Answer, damn it, I muttered, my voice raw. The phone hit the couch with a dull thud. I couldn't sit still. I paced the living room, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The house felt like a cage, its walls closing in. I yanked open a kitchen cabinet, searching for something, anything, that might belong to Emily. A scarf, a note, a piece of her I'd missed. Nothing but dusty mugs and expired spices. I slammed the door shut, the sound swallowed by the storm outside. Her letter echoed in my mind, I can't do this anymore. What couldn't she do? Me? Jack? Our life? My fists clenched, nails biting into my palms. I wanted to scream at her, to demand why she'd left me to rot in this half-life. I stormed down the hallway, pausing at the cracked mirror. My reflection stared back, sallow skin, gray hair, eyes like bruised fruit. I barely recognized myself. Why, Emily? I shouted, my fist slamming the wall. Pain shot through my knuckles, grounding me for a moment. In the drawer by the mirror, I found a postcard, its edges soft with age. Emily's handwriting curled across it, forever together. A lie. I tore it in half, the rip loud in the quiet. Regret hit instantly. I knelt, gathering the pieces, my hands shaking. I'm sorry, I whispered, to her, to myself. I grabbed the phone again, dialing the phone company. The operator's voice was flat, clinical. That number's unregistered, sir. No record. I pressed her, my voice rising. Check again. Please. She didn't budge. I hung up, my chest tight with despair. The house was a maze of dead ends. And I was lost in it. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the torn postcard in my hands. The rain was relentless, a curtain sealing me in. My eyes caught a flash of white in the drawer, a business card. Detective Mark Sullivan. The man who'd worked Emily's case years ago. My fingers hovered over it, hope and dread twisting inside me. I didn't know what came next, but I couldn't stop now. The kitchen was dim, the morning light struggling through grimy windows. I sat at the table, the business card in my hand. Detective Robert King. The edges were worn, the ink faded from years in the drawer. My thumb traced the name, as if it could summon answers. Yesterday's chaos, Emily's letter, the torn postcard, the unregistered number had left me hollow. But sitting here, staring at the card, I felt a spark. I couldn't wait anymore. I had to know. My chest tightened. What if she didn't want to be found? For years, I'd buried that fear, convincing myself her absence was a mystery, not a choice. The letter said otherwise. I have to go. Her words, sharp as a blade, cut through the life I'd built around her memory. I stood, the chair scraping the linoleum. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys, the metal cold against my skin. No more excuses. Outside, the air was sharp, the sky a flat gray over suburban Chicago. I slid into my old sedan, the engine coughing to life. The drive to the city was a blur, wet asphalt, flickering billboards, the hum of tires on the highway. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I imagined confronting Emily, her face older but familiar, her eyes hiding truths I wasn't ready for. The thought made my stomach churn, but I pressed the gas harder. Robert King's office was in a rundown building downtown, the kind where the elevator creaks and the air smells of stale coffee. I climbed the stairs, my boots echoing in the narrow hall. The door was frosted glass, his name stenciled in peeling letters. I hesitated, my hand on the knob. What was I walking into? I pushed the door open. The office was small, cluttered with papers and file boxes. A fan rattled in the corner, stirring the smell of cigarette ash. Robert sat behind a chipped desk, his tie loose, his face lined with years of seeing too much. A framed photo of a young girl, his daughter, maybe, sat beside a chipped mug. He looked up, his eyes sharp but tired. "Frank Thompson?" he asked, voice gravelly. I nodded, sitting in a creaky chair. "It's about my wife. Emily. She disappeared in 2007. My voice caught. I pulled the letter from my pocket, sliding it across the desk. "I found this yesterday. And a message. It said she's alive." Robert skimmed the letter, his expression unreadable. He leaned back, the chair groaning. "You sure you want to dig into this? People don't vanish for no reason." His words landed like stones. I swallowed, my throat dry. "I have to know," I said, quieter than I meant. My hands clenched in my lap, nails digging into my palms. Robert studied me, then nodded, though his eyes held doubt. "All right. I'll need everything you've got, photos, dates, habits. This won't be quick." He tapped the letter. "And Frank? Truth can hurt worse than wondering." His words echoed as I left the office. The city wind stung my face, carrying the faint tang of exhaust. Across the street, a skyscraper loomed, its glass reflecting the cloudy sky. I stood there, my heart pounding with something new, not hope, not fear, but a need to move forward. A clock on Robert's desk had ticked loudly, each second a reminder of time I'd lost. I wasn't losing more. The evening light slanted through my study, pooling on the hardwood floor. I sat at my desk, an open book on medieval history untouched in my hands. The room smelled of old paper and wax, the shelves sagging under years of collected books. A week had passed since I hired Robert King, 7 days of waiting that stretched like years. My eyes drifted to a photo of Jack on the desk, his graduation, his smile wide but guarded. I wondered what he'd say if he knew I was chasing his mother's ghost. The phone rang, sharp and sudden. I grabbed it, my pulse quickening. "Frank, it's Robert." His voice was steady, professional. "I've got something. Emily's in Iowa, about 300 miles west. Small town called Eldridge." I froze, the receiver cold against my ear. Iowa. My mind conjured fields of swaying corn, a quiet house, Emily standing at a window. Was she happy? Did she ever think of us? My throat tightened. "You're sure it's her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Driver's license, bank records." "It's her." Robert paused, then added, "She's not alone, Frank. She's got a new life." The words hit like a punch. A new life. Someone else's arms, someone else's home. I nodded, though he couldn't see me, my chest aching with a pain I couldn't name. "Thanks, Robert," I said, my voice flat. I hung up, staring at the desk. My fingers brushed a folded map, one Emily and I used for road trips we never took. The creases were soft, the ink faded, a relic of dreams we'd buried. I stood, pacing the study. The walls felt too close, the air heavy with dust. I thought of Jack, growing up without her. His first steps, wobbly and brave, in the living room. His school plays, where I clapped too loud to fill the silence of her absence. I told myself I was enough for him, but the lie stung now. I'd failed him, failed her, failed us all. My gaze fell on the map again. I unfolded it, tracing the route to Iowa with my finger. Eldridge. A dot on the page, a world away. What would I find there? Emily, older, changed, living a life that didn't include me? Or something worse? I didn't know, but the not knowing was a weight I couldn't carry anymore. I stopped at the desk, my eyes landing on Jack's photo again. He deserved to know. I'd kept too much from him, shielding him from pain that wasn't mine to control. My hand hovered over the phone, then pulled back. Not yet. I needed to see him, to say it face to face. The map lay open, a path to answers I wasn't sure I wanted. But I'd follow it. The cafe buzzed with life, clinking cups, soft laughter, the hiss of the espresso machine. I sat by the window, my fingers drumming on the table, the wood slick with condensation from my untouched coffee. The air smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, a warmth that clashed with the knot in my stomach. Jack was late. I checked my phone, then pocketed it, my eyes scanning the door. February 27, 2025. I'd called him last night, asking to meet. He'd sounded distant, but he agreed. The door swung open, and there he was, tall, his dark hair mussed, his jacket damp from the drizzle outside. He spotted me, his expression guarded, and crossed the room. He sat, his chair scraping the floor, his hands clasped tightly on the table. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice low, his eyes avoiding mine. I forced a smile. "Good to see you, Jack." My mind flashed to him as a boy, crayons scattered in the garden, asking why Mommy didn't come home. I'd lied then, saying she was in a better place. The truth was heavier now, and I wasn't sure I could carry it. But he needed to know. "Jack," I started, my voice unsteady, "I found something. About your mom. She's alive." The words hung between us, sharp and real. I watched his face, expecting shock, relief, anything. But he just stared at the table, his jaw tight. "I know," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "She wrote to me. 5 years ago." The cafe seemed to tilt. My breath caught, a cold weight settling in my chest. "You knew?" I leaned forward, my hands gripping the table. "For 5 years, you knew she was alive?" Jack's eyes met mine, pained but steady. "She sent a letter. Said she was sorry, that she couldn't come back." "I didn't tell you because," he faltered, his fingers twisting a napkin into a tight knot. "I didn't want to hurt you." "Hurt me." The words burned. I wanted to shout, to shake him, to demand why he'd kept this secret. My son, the one I'd raised alone, had carried her truth while I drowned in lies. My throat burned, but I swallowed the anger. "You're my son," I said, my voice low, trembling. You should have told me. He looked away, the napkin shredded in his hands. I thought I was protecting you, he whispered. The cafe's noise faded, leaving only the thud of my heart. I stood, my chair scraping loudly. I need air, I said, not looking at him. I pushed through the door, the cold Chicago wind biting my face. The street was gray, slick with rain, the city alive but distant. Jack's words echoed. She wrote to me. Emily had reached out, and I'd been left in the dark. Iowa waited, 300 miles away, with answers I wasn't sure I could face. But I'd go. The car hummed along the highway, the world outside a blur of gray and green. I left Chicago at dawn, the city's skyline fading in my rearview mirror like a memory I couldn't hold. February 28, 2025. My hands gripped the steering wheel, the leather worn smooth by years of restless drives. The silence in the car was heavy, broken only by the soft drone of the engine. Iowa. 300 miles to Eldridge, to Emily. 2 answers. Jack's words still burned. She wrote to me. 5 years, and he'd kept her secret. My son, the boy I'd raised alone, had built a wall I never saw. Guilt knotted me. Had I failed him, too? I pushed the thought away, focusing on the road. The sky hung low, clouds thick with the promise of rain. Billboards flickered past, selling dreams I didn't believe in anymore. Halfway there, I pulled into a gas station, the neon sign buzzing faintly. The air smelled of gasoline and wet asphalt. I filled the tank, the pump's rhythmic click grounding me. Inside the station, a radio crackled with an old country song, the kind Emily used to hum. I paid for a coffee, the cup burning my palm, and checked the address Robert had given me. 122, Maple Street, Eldridge. My fingers traced the paper, as if it could tell me what I'd find. Back in the car, a memory surfaced, our trip to Lake Michigan, 2003. Emily's laughter had filled the air, her hair catching the sunlight as she sang along to the radio. But her eyes, even then, had drifted to the horizon, distant, untouchable. I'd thought it was just a mood. Now, I wondered what I'd missed. The road stretched ahead, endless fields of corn swaying under the weight of my questions. An hour later, a sign read Eldridge, 5 miles. My heart lurched, a strange calm settling over me. I wasn't ready, but I was done running. The fields gave way to a small town, quiet streets, modest houses, a place that felt both foreign and familiar. I slowed as I reached Maple Street. There it was, 122. A tidy house with a wraparound porch, flowers blooming in neat rows. Emily's house. My chest tightened, but I didn't stop. I parked a block away, the engine ticking as it cooled. The house glowed in the dusk, its windows warm with light. I sat there, staring, my hands still on the wheel. A rusted mailbox stood by the road, overgrown with weeds, its door hanging open like an unanswered question. I wanted to march up to her door, to demand why she'd left us. But I didn't move. Not yet. The air was still, the world holding its breath. The porch steps creaked under my boots, each sound a countdown. The house stood before me, its white paint fresh, lavender blooming in pots by the door. Dusk wrapped the world in a soft purple haze, but my heart raced, a drumbeat of dread and need. I clutched my keys, the metal biting into my palm. 18 years, and it came to this. I raised my hand to knock, then froze. What if she wasn't there? What if she was? The door opened before I could decide. A woman stood there, her short silver hair catching the porch light. She was maybe 50, her eyes calm but sharp, like she'd seen trouble and knew how to handle it. "You're Frank," she said, not a question. Her voice was steady, with an edge I couldn't place. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. "I'm Lisa," she said. "Come in." The living room was warm, orderly, a stark contrast to my cluttered house in Chicago. Books lined the shelves, their spines worn but neat. A ceramic bird sat on the coffee table, delicate and out of place. The air smelled of chamomile and wood polish. Lisa gestured to a couch, but her posture was guarded, her shoulders squared. I sat, my hands restless in my lap. "She didn't expect you," Lisa said, standing by the window. Her words were clipped, protective. I swallowed, my mouth dry. I need to see her, I said, my voice low but firm. Lisa's eyes narrowed, studying me. Emily's happy here, Frank. You sure you want to stir that up? Her words stung. A quiet accusation. I thought of Emily's letter, her hurried scrawl, I have to go. Had she found happiness here, in this tidy house, with this woman? My chest ached, but I held Lisa's gaze. I just need to understand, I said, each word heavy. Lisa crossed her arms. She doesn't talk about you the way you probably think she does. The sentence landed like a slap, sharp and final. I flinched, my fingers digging into the couch. I wanted to argue, to say Emily had loved me, loved us. But the truth was in this room, in the life she'd built without me. My eyes caught a photo on the shelf, Lisa and Emily, laughing in a garden, their hands intertwined. The frame was polished, the moment preserved. My throat burned. That was her life now, not mine. Not ours. I looked away, my heart a tangle of grief and resignation. She'll be back soon, Lisa said, her tone softer but still wary. She moved to the kitchen, leaving me alone. I stared at the front door, its polished wood gleaming in the lamplight. Emily was coming. I wasn't ready, but I'd come too far to turn back. The clock on the wall ticked, each second pulling me closer to her. The living room was too quiet, the air thick with waiting. I sat on the couch, my hands clasped, the fabric rough under my fingers. The clock ticked, a steady pulse in the dim light. Chamomile lingered in the air, mixing with the faint scent of rain from outside. Lisa had disappeared into the kitchen, her footsteps soft but deliberate. I stared at the door, my heart a knot of hope and dread. Emily was coming. The lock clicked. The door swung open, and there she was. Emily. Her hair was gray now, pulled back in a loose braid, her face etched with lines I didn't know. But her eyes, those were the same, wide and haunted, carrying a guilt I could feel across the room. She froze, her hand on the doorknob, her coat dripping onto the floor. Frank, she whispered, her voice breaking. I stood, my legs unsteady. I wanted to run to her, to scream, to hold her. Instead, I reached into my pocket and placed her letter on the coffee table, the paper creased and worn. Her eyes followed it, her face paling. She shut the door, the sound soft but final, and sat across from me, her hands twisting a silver bracelet. You found it, she said, barely audible. Why did you leave? I asked, my voice raw, the question I'd carried for 18 years. She flinched, her fingers tightening on the bracelet. I was scared, Frank, she said, her voice trembling. Scared of being a bad mother, a bad wife. I was breaking, and I couldn't let you and Jack see it. Her words cut deep, stirring memories I'd buried. Her silences, her outbursts, the way she'd stare at nothing. I'd thought love could fix it. I was wrong. You left us, I said, my voice steady despite the ache. You wrote to Jack, but not me. Why? Her eyes filled with tears. I couldn't face you. You loved a version of me that wasn't real. She looked away, her shoulders sagging. I'm sorry, Frank. I regretted it every day. The room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in. I'd built her up as a saint, a tragedy, but she was just human, flawed, fragile, afraid. My anger faded, leaving a hollow space. I took a slow breath, the air cool in my lungs. I waited for you, I said softly. But I can't anymore. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. On the table, her keys lay beside mine, their metal glinting in the lamplight. Hers were new, attached to a charm I didn't recognize. Mine were scratched, heavy with years. Separate lives, separate paths. I stood, my chest lighter than it had been in years. Thank you, I said, meaning it. For the truth. I walked to the door, stepping onto the porch. The night air was cold, sharp with the promise of spring. I didn't look back. The stars were faint above, and I felt the road calling me home. The highway stretched into the dusk, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through Iowa's endless fields. I drove back to Chicago, the car's hum a steady companion. March 1st, 2025. My hands rested lightly on the wheel, but my mind churned. Emily's face lingered, her gray hair, her guilty eyes, her voice confessing fears I'd never understood. I was scared. Frank. Her words echoed, unraveling the myth I'd built around her. I'd loved a shadow, not a woman. The sky darkened, stars pricking through the haze. I thought of Jack, his secret kept for 5 years. My anger had faded, replaced by a dull ache. I'd been so focused on Emily's absence that I'd missed his pain, his silences. My fingers tightened on the wheel. I'd failed him, too, hadn't I? The road blurred, not from speed but from the weight of regret. I pulled into a motel, its neon sign flickering vacancy and tired pink. The lot was nearly empty, gravel crunching under my tires. Inside, the room was small, the air heavy with the scent of damp towels and cheap soap. A threadbare carpet scratched my boots. I dropped my bag on the bed, the springs creaking, and caught my reflection in a cracked mirror. My face was older than I remembered, lines deeper, eyes shadowed. You lived for her, I whispered. For Jack. Never for you. I sat on the bed, my hands clasped. A memory surfaced, Jack, maybe 10, slamming his bedroom door after I'd yelled over a spilled juice. I'd been raw then, broken by Emily's disappearance, and I'd let that pain spill onto him. Guilt twisted in my chest. I'd wanted to be his rock, but I'd been a storm. And Emily, I'd painted her as perfect to shield myself from the truth. We'd both been flawed, both afraid. My gaze drifted to the window. A forgotten pencil lay on the sill, its eraser worn to a nub. I picked it up, rolling it between my fingers. It was nothing, just a stray object, but it felt like a promise, a chance to write something new. I leaned back, the pillow stiff against my neck. Emily's words played again, I couldn't let you see me break. I'd blamed her, but I'd broken too, hadn't I? In my silence, my waiting, my refusal to live. The stars outside were bright, scattered like spilled salt. I held the pencil, its weight grounding me. Sleep tugged at my edges, but my mind stayed sharp. I wasn't the man who'd left Chicago, chasing a ghost. I was someone else now, someone who could choose himself. The thought was fragile, but it was mine. The evening light spilled into my study, soft and golden, catching the edges of my books. I sat at my desk, a mug of coffee cooling beside me. The house was quiet, but not heavy, not anymore. March 3rd, 2025. 2 days since Iowa, since Emily's truth set me free. A photo of her sat on the shelf, her smile frozen in 2005. I looked at it, my chest steady, no longer tight with grief. I'd spent years chasing her, building a life around her absence. Every choice, every silence, had been for her, for Jack, for a past I couldn't reclaim. But Iowa changed that. I saw her, not as a saint or a villain, but as a person, scared, human, lost. And I saw myself, too, a man who'd forgotten how to live for himself. The realization was a quiet earthquake, shifting everything. I pulled a sheet of paper from the drawer, the edges crisp. My pen hovered, then pressed down. Dear Emily, I wrote. The words came slowly, each one a step. I forgive you. I forgive myself. I'm done waiting. I paused, the pen trembling. I thought of the nights I'd sat here, alone, the house a tomb for my hopes. That first year without her, I'd stared at this desk, willing her to call, to come back. She never did. But I'd survived. I stood, carrying the letter to the backyard. The air was cool, the grass damp under my boots. A metal bowl sat by the patio, leftover from some forgotten barbecue. I placed the letter inside, struck a match. The flame caught, small at first, then hungry. The paper curled, blackening, the words rising as ash. I watched, my breath even, my heart light. The fire crackled, its warmth brushing my face. I wasn't burning her memory, I was burning my pain. The tree in the yard stood tall, its branches tipped with new buds, fragile but stubborn. Spring was coming, and I felt it in me, too, a stirring, a chance to grow. I smiled, the motion unfamiliar but real. The bowl glowed, embers fading into the night. I turned back to the house, my steps sure. Inside, my eyes caught a brochure on the table, writing courses at the community center. I'd tossed it there weeks ago, dismissing it as a whim. Now, it seemed like a door, cracked open, waiting. I picked it up, my fingers tracing the bold print. The house was still, but alive, its silence no longer a weight. The park was alive with spring, cherry blossoms drifting like soft snow. I stood by a bench, the April sun warm on my face. April 2025. The air smelled of fresh grass and possibility, a far cry from the stale winter of my 55th birthday. I smiled, the motion easy now, not forced. For the first time in years, I felt light, unburdened by the ghosts I'd carried. Last month, I'd signed up for a writing course. The classroom was small, filled with the scent of sharpened pencils and new paper. I sat at a desk, my notebook open, my pen hesitant but eager. The teacher's voice was kind, guiding us to write what we knew. I wrote about loss, about finding myself in the ashes of what was. Each word felt like a step forward, a claim on the life I'd ignored. I thought of my journey, Emily's letter, the basement, Iowa, her truth. I'd searched for her, but found myself instead. The pain had carved me, but it also shaped me, teaching me to stand alone, to choose myself. I was grateful for it, in a strange, quiet way. The park's breeze stirred, lifting a blossom to my feet. I picked it up, its petals soft against my thumb. I'd called Jack last week, asking to meet. He'd agreed, his voice cautious but warm. We sat in a cafe, the same one where he'd confessed his secret. He looked older now, his eyes softer, his shoulders less tense. I want to be a better father, I said, my voice steady. He smiled, a real smile, not the guarded one I knew. You always were, Dad, he said, his hand brushing mine. We talked for hours, about his job, his dreams, the years we'd lost. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Back home, I stood in the living room, the windows open to let in the spring air. The curtains were new, bright, a small change that felt like a victory. On the table, Emily's photo sat, its frame dusted but untouched by pain. I looked at her, my heart calm. She was part of me, always would be, but she no longer defined me. I was enough. Outside, a bird flitted past the window, its wings a blur of motion. It soared, free, untethered. I felt that freedom, too, in my bones, in the quiet joy of being. I sat at my desk, my notebook open, the pages blank but inviting. My pen touched the paper, the ink flowing. I didn't know what I'd write, but I knew I'd keep going. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.